We could do a whole channel on black violence and denial in Indianapolis. We've done a lot of stories on Indianapolis over the years, but we backed away from a little bit because they're too obvious now. Indianapolis is a place where everybody is really determined to be nice. They're really determined to preserve this image of Indianapolis as a place where people take picnic baskets covered with red and white tablecloths out to the big oak tree in the pasture out there, and they open it up and they have buttermilk, fried chicken, and biscuits. That's not Indianapolis anymore. Indianapolis is a dark and dirty chocolate city with a nasty little problem of black crime, violence, and denial from reporters and public officials. We're going to look at one reporter in particular that a couple of years ago, he decided he was going to take his family from the suburbs into the black part of town. And I thought, this is going to be great. He said he's going to write about it. Well, he didn't really write about it that much. He wrote about it a couple times. And let's talk about what happened to his career as the chronicler of all things good happening in the most dangerous neighborhoods of Indianapolis. But first, let's see what is a more likely story in Indianapolis, one we're more easier to find than his stories of all these great things.
Police need your help finding this man caught on camera peering into an East Side home. But it's what happened next that has a family so concerned.
They say the man crawled into their house and then into bed with a 10-year-old girl. Our Emily Longnecker spoke with that child's grandmother about her run-in with the man and the effort now to find him.
It's home security video that makes Robin Markham's blood run cold.
Just in case something does happen.
Watching a man looking inside the windows of her East New York Street home in the early morning hours after Halloween, especially since the man is still out there.
Is he out there watching us, or is he going to come back, or what? I mean, you never know what people think anymore.
Markham didn't know it at the time, but minutes later the man crawled through a back kitchen window.
And this is the window he came in.
And into the bed of her 10-year-old granddaughter.
She said he lay down and was trying to feel on her.
According to Markham, her granddaughter came running out of the bedroom but didn't explain why.
But she was scared to scream.
Moments later, Markham came face to face with a man she didn't know.
I went up against the wall hard because I didn't know if he was going to grab me or what his intentions was. I said, who are you and why are you in my house? He said, oh, it's storming and you let me stay all night.
Moments later,
he went out this door here.
And since this all happened, the family isn't taking any chances. Take a look. They've installed alarms on the windows and doors to alert them should anybody get in again.
I'm freaking out.
Robin Markham still can't sleep since it happened. Neither can her grandchildren.
I think I'd feel better and safer if he does get caught.
Emily Longnecker, Channel 13, Eyewitness News.
Okay, so the guy we're talking about, his name is Robert King. He was a big dog at the Indianapolis Star News. He's sitting in church one day about 5 or 6, maybe more, a little more than 5 years ago. This pastor in the suburbs is harassing and haranguing everybody. What are you guys going to do about all this bad stuff in Indianapolis? Are you going to stand out here on the sidelines and just watch it and just talk about it? Or are you going to do something about it? Because the major tenet of every white liberal inside, they know that the only thing wrong with black people is that they're not being exposed to enough white liberal people to show them how they're supposed to improve their lives. So Mr. Robert King packed up himself, his wife, and a couple daughters, and they moved to a part of town called Near East Side in Indianapolis. This is a dangerous place. You wouldn't know it from his reporting on it, because he reports that he and his family are very happy there. His daughters are going to school there, and we never really figured out what happened to them either. All we know is that he turned all these dangerous elements in his neighborhood into little characters you might read out of some kind of kid story or something. Oh, there's the burglar. Yeah, he knows us all pretty well, and we can't seem to catch him. There's the prostitutes hanging out on the corner. Yeah, we had a murder here a little while ago, but darn it, that could happen anywhere. So I thought, okay, how long can he live in this part of town? He has to write a column about it, right? This has to be like a major thing in his life. No, he didn't really do much on it. Every time I looked him up, I'd see something a little here, a little there. Nothing really what it was like living in his part of town. Nothing of what it was like sending his 2 teenage daughters to school at a black high school. So they must be kind of grown out of most of it by now. He's got a wife down there. Anything else happened to him? He did one story about relatively recently about how things are getting better down there. And they're getting better because the white people are moving in. Of course, it was a pretty long story, but halfway through the story, he had to get into something, had to get into the big brick wall of gentrification. And he started talking to all the black people, and the black people started telling him, it's like, hey, you think all these white people opening coffee shops is something we want? And the cool restaurants and the $10 glasses of beer? No, we don't want any part of that. White people are ruining this neighborhood. They're making it too expensive for us to live here. We don't like the new houses. They'll raise our property taxes. And so Mr. Robert King pretty much shrugged his shoulders and went, wow, I guess everything down here is much more nuanced than I thought. Meanwhile, the crime continues like we just saw. That part of Indianapolis is still a nasty bit of business down there, and it still spills over into lots of other places in Indianapolis. We've done a lot of stories in Indianapolis, and don't make the black kids angry. I mean, what about the Indiana Black Expo? They hold it once a year in downtown Indy, which is in tatters the rest of the year. They turned downtown Indianapolis into a armed camp, complete with horses, lots of cops, big bright lights, lots of radios, dogs. And this Indiana Black Expo was an occasion of large-scale violence, mayhem, and chaos until they turned it into the armed camp, and it's probably a little more safe and secure now. But still, Mr. Robert King, well, I think he kind of got tired of. He described himself as a guy reporting on crime and crime solutions, but he's really kind of morphed in just a beat reporter. He was the guy they said, hey, this politician's in town, go out and cover him. This politician's in town, go out and cover him. And when you look for his columns at the Indy Star News, first thing you come across is a feature from his publisher, Gannett. I think that's Gannett. Yeah, Gannett. And Gannett is absolutely the worst chain in America, by the way. 100% the worst. Anyway, you see this story, a new podcast about how black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. I don't think that podcast focuses on Indianapolis, but it's a wide-ranging podcast, letting all of us white people, Asian people, young people, old people, gay people, straight people, kitties, puppies, turtles, and dogs, and goldfish, letting all of them know, us know, how cruel we constantly are to black people. Mr. King's time at the Star News ended a few months ago. He decided to, the newspaper business, okay, newsflash, it's dying. When it dies in places like Indianapolis, everybody sees the writing on the wall. They know there are too many people working there. They know too many reporters are writing too many dull stories. Nobody's reading. Everybody knows, it's going to be downsized, use more stories from The Wire. So, Mr. Robert King saw the writing on the wall, even though he was one of the big dogs over there, and he took a job where the business is booming, Indiana University Medical School. So he's, in his description, he says, I write stories about how, our stuff improves people's lives to support contributions and donations and whatever the buzzwords are for frisking the rich people who go to hospitals these days. I don't know if he still lives there. I mean, to live in a place like that, if you're a single guy, if you're a single woman, these early gentrifiers, they're not families. You see a lot of gay people in these early gentrified areas because they don't have families. So when you walk down the street as a single person, as a single guy, you can, your attitude is, okay, I'm going to watch out for myself and I'll be casting my radar around myself and keeping an eye on myself. Maybe I have some protection in my pocket. That's one level, okay, of awareness. But if you move into a dark, dangerous, and dirty chocolate neighborhood like the east side of Indianapolis, with your family, all of a sudden, you didn't just triple your level of awareness. No, this is logarithmic. It went up like 300 times. Your girls go out to school to go to high school. Do you really think they're safe? Do you really think they're safer there than they were where they went to school before? Do you think your wife is safe taking the trash out at night? Does she even do that? The answer to those questions, any quasi-honest person knows the answer to those questions. You know, in Indianapolis, we actually do have a quasi-honest person. We talked about this guy a lot in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. At least we featured his column. And also in White Girl Bleed a lot. There's a guy his name is Abdul Hakim Shabazz. He wrote a big column. He's a black lawyer. He's an activist. He's got a radio show. I think he does stuff on TV there once in a while. He writes this column, and he said, and talking about what it's like to be just a regular old black dude walking around Indianapolis. He said it's unbelievably dangerous, this town. We don't need to have lots more ministers creating relationships with these gangsters so they'll see the light. None of that works. Because here's the real problem in Indianapolis, saith Abdul Hakim Shabazz. Quote, Indianapolis, you have a problem. Your problem is young black men who are out of control. There's a truth teller. That's the guy that should be running the newsroom at the Indianapolis Star instead of these idiots, these delusional idiots like Robert King, who are just absolutely determined to paper over any kind of ridiculous level of racial crime and violence that we see in Indianapolis all the time. Denial, deceit, delusion. Oh yeah, that never makes the black kids angry.